This hour of the Alan Autry Show is sponsored by Sinlong, the most realistic artificial grass in the Central Valley.
From NFL quarterback to Hollywood to the mayor's office and now behind the mic at KXEX, this is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat on Big Wednesday. I'm old Alan Autry, so honored and humbled to have you with us today. And those of you on radio don't see my fist pump during the intro. It's a long intro, but I don't know which one of those quotes and sound bites we would take out. I just love them all. I find myself that, depending on the day, the mood, fists, pumping my fist in the air on every single one of them. Today it was Al Michaels when he says, "Do you believe in victory, in miracles?" Yes. I had to fist pump that because I definitely believe in miracles. I believe we got a miracle-making God. We think it's something big. For him, it's an everyday occurrence. It's no big deal for our Lord. But for me, I have to believe in miracles because I made a living in Hollywood for almost 35 years with this face. So I know that miracles happen. I'm a living, walking, talking miracle. All right? So just know that. It's not to God, again, like to us, that's a miracle. They were dead and came back to life. Or, gosh, I got this check in the mail. I wasn't expecting it. Or my husband suddenly started making sense and treating me nice. Miracles happen. For God, it's an everyday occurrence, and just that's why we put our trust in him. Okay, and again, radio, you can't see this, obviously, but on our video feeds, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and such, you'll see my eyes. We're in a new studio, so fondly referred to as the Fishbowl. I love it, nice and cozy. You'll see my eyes look up and around. Well, number one, I'm probably thanking the good Lord for just another day on the earth. But we also have the video screens, Fox News feed and CNN. So don't say we're not fair and balanced there. So when you see my eyes darting up and around, I'm not having a stroke or a brain seizure at that time. Probably not. But that's what I'm doing. And an odd occurrence, looking up, and a Fox News feed just a minute ago and CNN had nearly exactly the same headline on their feed. And that was Xi and Biden in high-stakes meeting in San Francisco. I guess it's high stakes because both of them run a very real risk of stepping in some human crap when from their limo into the meeting room. Might accidentally fall, Joe, and land on a hypodermic needle there and get stuck and have to go get that fixed. But that aside, obviously, that's silly dig into San Francisco. Not silly, just truthful. Dadgummit, I love that city. I went to UOP, which is in Stockton, California, which is just a little more than a stone's throw from San Francisco. We used to go there all the time. And dadgummit, it was just great riding the trolley cars. And there really wasn't a bad enough district in San Francisco that you really felt truly unsafe going to. Now, what they call the Tenderloin District was always kind of rough, but it was not like today. I mean, you just have these random assaults on people, the homeless being very aggressive. My wife and I were there getting ready to catch a trolley car a few years back and literally were harassed by a homeless person, asked for some money, gave him like $5, and that wasn't enough. He kept on, oh, you can afford more than that. More than that. I saw you on TV. I know in your TV show. I said, well, yeah, but I don't cash Schwarzenegger-sized checks. And he kept on, and he got right in our space. And, I said, my heart was still bleeding for the guy, even if he was a fake homeless guy, to descend so low that you would harass people you don't know and a woman, at that, you got to be pretty low. So my heart was still going out to them. But finally I said, listen, dude, I'm going to have to call somebody here. I can't lay hands on you, although I feel like it right then, because he pushed a few buttons when he turned some of his stuff towards my wife. But anyway, there was a security guy came along and took the guy away. And I knew then we were entering a different era. Homeless never did that. Homeless comes from a lineage, ironically, of some pretty honorable people. They are descendants of the hobos. If you read the folklore about hobos, we had hobos when I lived out in Tulare when I was 6 years old. I remember the hobos used to camp out, well, we called it a bayou, but it wasn't a bayou. It was a little stream. And they would go and camp out there because there was a railroad track went right by our house. I still remember that. Dadgum, you could hear it coming way down the road, and when it got past our house would shake. It's really kind of neat, exciting, and scary at the same time. But time to time, the hobos would come up to the door, knock on the door, and my grandpa would always make sure that we gave them some food. It was a regular occurrence, and they always said thank you. And they always said, I remember hearing it almost every single time. The hobo would ask if there's something they could do. Can I cut some weeds? Can I feed your chickens? We had chickens out in the back. Can I do something? And I can't remember a time where my grandfather, or we had aunts and uncles living there, 10 aunts and uncles, my mom, in a one-bathroom house. You call it a house. It was a shack, actually, but those people made it a home. I have fond memories of that old shack out in the middle of nowhere. But they would say no, and there was an honor. There was just, and you just didn't worry about it. We didn't go to bed at night worrying whether one of the hobos was going to break into our house with a hammer, like, they did with Paul Pelosi, or being accosted like we were in San Francisco. So anyway, didn't plan on deviating that far off of the Xi Jinping Biden meeting, which everybody is billing as such a huge thing. It's not, I don't consider it a big deal in terms of what's going to come out of it. You got to break this down into its practical, pragmatic nature. There's nothing outside of eyeball to eyeball in the symbolic nature that China, clearly on the side of Russia in the war with the Ukraine, is going to meet with the American president. That gives hope that the Sino-American relations, the China-American relations can thaw out a little bit and make it through this, because we're so economically intertwined in many ways that I think are not helpful and good for the United States. I think we need to break our dependence to a certain degree. Decouple is the word they use out there now a lot. Not totally, because we're in a global economy. Like it or not, I think there's always been trade between countries all the way back. I mean, that's not a new thing. But making your economy totally dependent on another country, where from your transportation to your health, in particular antibiotics, is dependent on whether you keep a supply chain open to another country, that's very, very dangerous. That's why here in California, San Joaquin Valley, I was part of an effort to emphasize agriculture and the growing of food when we're still being hit by this notion, this ideology, this political belief that we could farm out our food to some other countries. And that would be okay, that we put something you need to absolutely survive. I would call that an existential threat, more so than climate change, that they say even if you don't address it, you won't feel the effects for over 120 years. The most immediate existential threat is bad political policies that could lead to World War III. And this thing, well, how does supply chain lead to World War III? When your country's starving and you got nuclear weapons and you got to feed your people, desperate people do desperate things. And desperate politicians do desperate things. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But anyway, in terms of this meeting, I just, outside of that, the symbolic nature, there's not going to be anything signed there or agreed to with Joe Biden and Xi Jinping. Why? Because Joe's overmatched. Okay? You're not going, Joe at this point is going to be 81 pretty soon. And I just heard Bernie Sanders last night, 82 years old. It's not about age. It's about the condition you're in. And you can be a spry 82 like Bernie Sanders and make a lot of sense, a lot of energy, or you could be a very old 80, soon to be 81 Joe Biden. And that's not, I don't mean to be mean. It just is what it is. But there's not going to be policy made with Joe without his entire set of advisors around him that are telling him what to do from the moment he went into the bunker during the first campaign and until now. He's incapable of processing information, making very important decisions, and processing that, as I said, in his mind, the consequences of his decisions, the blessings of the right one, the deleterious, horrible consequences of the wrong one, like pulling out of Afghanistan, like he did, which was basically a surrender, not a withdrawal of any kind. We're withdrawing righteously. No, you're not. You're surrendering. You're running like scalded dogs, and we had Marines, innocent people killed because of that. But I don't see the real anything substantive coming out of it. You'll hear Ping come out and say, we call for world peace. Peace, people, nations should work together, not wage war. But you're not going to see him come out and suddenly take the side of the Ukraine. You're not going to see him come out and suddenly say, hey, forget my partnerships that I have with Saudi Arabia, Iran, Qatar, a bunch of those countries that are clearly anti-Israel and in many ways anti-United States, because if you're anti-one, you're anti the other, because we're just joined at the hip. We're political twins, if you will. You're not going to see him come out and make some bold statement like suddenly Israel has a right to exist. They'll wordsmith it around to make it sound good, but nothing substantive. And Joe Biden's team is going to do the same thing. So I think the real important thing that came out of this, that's going to come out of this meeting, is a local thing. And it's a local thing that has ramifications and reverberations for every big city around the country, in particular those run by Democratic mayors and those that have been under the Democratic rule for a long, long time, because your cities are in crisis. You have a public safety crisis. You have a jobs crisis. Your schools don't work. You have a teen violence crisis. Any way you look at it, your cities are sick. They're on life support. And one of the key negative things, along with the ones I just mentioned, is homelessness. Now, they kept telling us in San Francisco, when all of this, there's homeless everywhere, not just on a Tenderloin, but everywhere, to the point where big headquarter companies that have been there for a long, long time, Elon Musk, moving much of his workforce out of San Francisco to Texas, and told you why. The quality of life is just non-existent there. It's too horrible. I'm afraid for my employees to come to work. And many of these actually woke companies that stood by San Francisco much longer than they should, suddenly realized, or not suddenly, finally realized, this government is not going to change. This ideology of just letting the homeless die like dogs out on the street, and just like a dog crap wherever he wants to. You wouldn't let animals live like San Francisco and other big cities have let homeless live. They just wouldn't. I got in trouble as mayor for what they call cleaning up a homeless encampment. Many of those folks got in treatment. A lot of them didn't. But they couldn't have a camp out in front of homes where people had kids playing out in the front yard, and right across the street were people urinating, shooting up drugs, having sex. Well, yeah, my heart bleeds for the homeless, but that family who has kids should have a right to have the kids be able to play out in the front yard without being exposed to that stuff. and they were illegally camped on, it was actually county and state property, as well as city property. So they were illegally camped, yet I got called into court. My administration got sued by the ACLU. Saying I came in and they were taking coffee cans full of crap and putting them into bags, plastic bags. They had to go in there with hazmat suits. But the premise was you took the homeless's stuff. You took their possessions. And I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? And I think I said this in court. I said, I just can't see anybody, including a homeless person, running up to a guy wearing a hazmat suit, and saying, "Hey, don't touch that. That's my turd." That it was beyond sanity. But the ACLU, I didn't get any complaints from the homeless themselves because we went out there early and said, "Hey, we're coming through here. Can't be here, but I'm going to bring in a team. If you need addiction help, we got it. You need relocation help, we got it." The problem is I drove up in my Jaguar, my wife's Jaguar, in a suit. I got beat at my own game because unbeknownst to me, there was a local activist with a camera. So the movies, I know how a picture's worth 1,000 words. You got a video on something, that's going to trump what anybody says. That's going to beat what anybody says happens. If you got somebody with a video, you can spin that video any way you want it. It's like the same thing with data. So the data says this. I use that a lot, but in politics, there's always saying that you can make data say anything if you squeeze it hard enough. So any way you want to squeeze it, you can make it say what you want it to say. Now, when I use data, it's pure data. All right, it's not been squeezed. I didn't squeeze it. I'm not a data squeezer, ex-mayor. Believe in the truth. But they showed this thing. Here it is, the homeless camp. Here comes the old Jaguar rolling up. Here comes the old movie actor coming out of his car in his suit and his tie, walking through with all the folks there that don't have anything. I mean, it was like the perfect setup that I walked right into. You know, the snobbish, elite, hard-hearted, Southern Christian, white mayor just cleaning, making people who have very little in their life, that are down on their luck, that need help, and he's just kicking them out of their homes. But anyway, we got through that. We got it, I think, set on the right path. We went in, we were able to air it out in court. But here's my point before we go to break. They told us that the problem of so-called cleaning up that area of San Francisco in front of the beautiful hotel, that these officials from around the country, it was an APEC meeting, Asian, Pacific, whatever, but it was all mostly Asian countries that we do business with as a country. And they're coming in there, and miraculously, this complex problem called homelessness around that area that they said they couldn't clean up. It was too complex to clean up. They cleaned it up. You go now where there used to be some turd you could eat off the sidewalk now, where there used to be just hypodermic needles and crap. Not a homeless in sight. You could put your head on a swivel, look 360. Where did they go? How did they solve this complex problem in like several days? We're going to talk about that when we come back. It baffles me. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat. There it is again, folks, on social media. Headline, Biden and Xi's high-stakes meeting. That's on Fox News. Then on the left, CNN feed, right-wing hardliners give Johnson 10 days to win them over. You got 10 days, dude. Deliver us a bill we can sign, or we're going to let the country shut down, and they're going to blame you. It is so WWE. You think it's not? We got some sound bites for you. It happened yesterday. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, all right, Jeremy. Anytime you want to come back, I'm ready. Ready? Clean up a large part of San Francisco, one of the nicer parts of San Francisco, prior to the big meeting with Xi and Joe Biden and some other leaders of Asian countries. They were able to do the impossible. Prior, it was so complex that it couldn't be answered. The question couldn't be answered. How do we end homelessness? The real truth is, the truth on the table here, the old saying, truth will set you free, but first don't make you miserable. And the miserable truth is they know how to do it. You get people off the street, and you have to get them into help and mandate that help. No homeless person I've ever met is going to voluntarily get help. Most of them. There are rare occurrences when they will make that decision. But if you mandate it in terms, well, you can stay here in this housing we're providing for you, but you've got to have treatment. You've got to go in and take this seriously. You'll be amazed how much of a dent you can make in the homeless problem, because between mental health and addiction, I think those two things are so closely connected. Can't really separate it, those two. You're going to address probably 80 to 85% of the homeless. The others are, you have the single mother living out of her car with their two kids. I'm not minimizing that. You're going to find those exceptions. People became homeless because of life circumstances. And those are much more easy to address and help. But that's the deal there. It never was that complex. It's hard because there's a lot of money to be made with the homeless issue. You go and see how many millions, tens of millions, now going into the billions over the course of time spent on grants to cities to fight homelessness. Well, you know where that money goes? Most of it, I know, because I was a mayor for 8 years. I know how the sausage is made. They'll send this money to nonprofits, which ironically, and for some inexplicable reasons, the head of these nonprofits always seem to have a very strong relationship to congressmen, senators, their local elected officials, and the money always seems to find its way to that nonprofit. Then you look at the nonprofit, the consultants that they're being paid, millions of dollars to consult on the homeless issue. And then you see many of those people who run that nonprofit, so that's all they do. That's their job. So what happens if you solve the homeless problem and you don't need that nonprofit anymore? They're out of a job. They lose that money. They got to, God forbid, do something else. And I know some folks are saying, well, that's not the whole problem. Let me tell you, it's a big part of the problem why they are not cities. I'm talking about they, meaning the cities, don't try things that you know you can't keep doing the same thing you're doing now. Try new things. And one of the old things was you mandate somebody who, in many cases, homeless are breaking the law, and where they put their encampments, and you make these decisions. They used to do that with so-called incorrigible teens in front of a judge. The judge would say, look, you got two choices. I'm going to put you in jail, or you can join the military. And many of them joined the military, and many of them got their lives straightened out. But it was forced upon them. They weren't get the option of, well, okay, you're out here, you robbed a liquor store, you punched out a security guard, but since it was less than $900 being stolen, and that security guard probably had it coming because he was white, well, you're not going to have to serve any time. And there's no consequences. So you not only make society worse and society more fearful of these young people and homeless, going up and accosting people like us at the trolley car line, you don't do them any favors. You don't help them at all. You hurt the homeless by perpetuating homelessness. You hurt young people by not holding them accountable and disciplined when it would really have an effect, when they're younger. Because when you're younger, that's when things are impressioned upon you. Things happen. But you let people get away with it. Then when they become full-fledged adults, those crimes are not expunged from the record anymore. It sticks. Then who in the business is going to hire an ex-con? Would you? Be honest now. All you folks out there that have businesses going, oh, you need to give these young kids a chance. These violent kids who can't control their temper and have done all these crimes. You need to hire them, give them a chance. They're just misunderstood kids. Many of them are. They've had a bad upbringing, which they have. But are you going to be the one to hire that individual and put them next to your other employee? What is that other employee going to do? Wait a minute, boss. Anyway. As Fred Thompson said, why do they call it common sense when it's so uncommon? Well, let's move on here. First, we got to touch on this military operation that Israel is in the process right now of implementing at the hospital, the Al-Shifa. I call it Shifa because Shifa sounds too much like Adam Shifa, and I don't want to denigrate that. Al-Shifa Hospital, the biggest hospital in Gaza, which it appears by all the intelligence that has been gathered, not just by Israel, but the United States, their intelligence officials has said it's not only a big hospital, but it's also the command center for Hamas. And this is what they do. We talked about this on the show yesterday. It is a classic example of good versus evil. Not perfect Israel versus evil. Because Israel, everybody falls short of the glory of God. But clearly, to draw the moral equivalency to unprovoked beheadings and slaughter of children and women on October 7th to a surgical military operation doing its best to minimize innocent loss of life, but having to go after murderers that use women and children as human shields, you make the moral equivalence to that, you got a problem. You got a real problem. I don't denigrate somebody's faith or even somebody's political view. We may disagree, but if you think that's morally equivalent, you're tap dancing, if not a full embrace dance with the devil. This is big stuff. This is not, well, I broke the law by, I think there should be more parking downtown, so I'm going to park illegally, get my ticket, fight it, because it's an injustice. They should have more parking downtown. This is talking about human life. The biggest massacre since the Holocaust of Jewish people. And you had people, they didn't go after military installations surgically. They went after the most vulnerable people, women and children and old ladies in their 80s. You're going to say that's morally equivalent to Israel going after these bloodthirsty, insatiably bloodthirsty people that are use hospitals? By the way, they talk about Israel being guilty of war crimes because of the quote, indiscriminate bombing, which is not indiscriminate. They may get some bad intelligence, this and that, but I believe Israel, when they say they're doing everything they can, they're going to get rid of Hamas. They cannot be too deterred from that. And the world's depending on them to get rid of Hamas. You know, unless you want to live under authoritarian rule, it tells you how to go to the bathroom, to where you can. We don't. That's a radical interpretation of Islam. But out of 1.6 billion Muslims, they say just 20 to 25% of the people adhere to radical Islam. Yeah, that's a small percentage, but that's like 200 to 300 million people. It's a lot out there. But you hear this phrase used against Israel, and you hear it used from the protesters to the UN to politicians, American politicians, and voices around the world saying Israel is a committer of war crimes. That's a war crime to go in after Hamas that has set up base under a hospital and right next to a hospital. Well, do a little research. I did on war crimes. If you accept that, which I don't, but say that's the standard, if you look into what constitutes a war crime, Hamas is guilty not only of one in this particular instance, not two, but three war crimes. Number one, did you know if you set up a military base in a hospital or right next to a hospital, that's a war crime? Didn't know that, did you? A lot of people didn't know that. I always thought, that should be, but it's probably not. Yes, it is. It's codified. That is a genuine prosecutorial, if that's the right word, war crime. You can go convict an individual, an organization, or a country if they violate that. That's one. Number two, you can't use another human being as a shield to protect your own life. You can't grab somebody, put it in front of you, an innocent person, or anybody for that matter, to protect your own life. That is a war crime. Did you know that? You don't hear that on CNN. I don't see that on our feed up here. That's war crime number two. And again, one of those where I say, hey, should be, but probably not, because the UN would be pointing this out, right? The UN they're pointing out that going after murderers that are embedded in a hospital is absolutely a war crime. And I can't work up a fraud with people who see it that way. There's a way you can spin that. I think it's a heck of a spin to get there. I don't think there's moral equivalency there to make it a war crime. It's unfortunate, it's hurtful, it's tragic. But what else are you going to do? Wait for them to reload and reinvade and re-kill? When does it stop? Answer, never. So that's two. You set up your command post or a military installation in a hospital or next to the hospital. Number two, you use innocent people as human shields. War crime number two. And the third Hamas is, but before we go back to this third, is I would really encourage all of you, and it's going to shock some folks, in order to find what you feel is somewhat the truth. And the reason I stop is I want you to hear from me. I don't want you to take what I'm saying as gospel. Oh, Autry said it, so I believe it. Go do your own research. It's out there. Read everything from Al Jazeera to Fox News to the New York Times. Take the time. You can speed read those things. You can be done in like 15, 20 minutes. It'd be good for you to do that. And I think you're going to find, it may surprise you what your conclusions may be. And there's several instances where my conclusions are not really what I wanted them to be. Okay? I didn't want that. But so I just wanted to make that point because sometimes I tend to forget it. And then when I'm driving home, I go, gosh, I wish I would have made that point. The third war crime was actually the most obvious, is that when you invade a country and you just start killing innocent people, cutting their heads off and burn them, that's a war crime. So you probably want to start with that one because that's the easy one. But I started with the two others that a lot of people may not know that's officially a war crime. So you got three clear violations of international law, because there is such a thing, according to the UN and the world organizations, it seems like an oxymoron, but rules of war. And you're fighting and thank God for that, war is hell, even with rules. It's hell. But you're having Hamas who plays by 7th century rules. And you know what that is? There is no rules. It's just about annihilation. There is no war crime in 7th century mentality and prior to that. It was survival of the fittest, the strongest. There was no world court. There was no court that you could take your grievance to. That would just, if you had the power, baby, you did it. And how you fought wars would just totally eliminate the enemy. It's based on what Hassan Youssef said. Keep that name, write it down. Hassan Youssef. he happens to be the son of one of the founders of Hamas. And no less of a expert on Hamas than that said these people are 7th century mentality, which means you cannot use traditional strategies to deal with them because they subscribe to the annihilation strategy, which means you annihilate your enemy or be annihilated trying to. So there's no negotiating with them. So look at the position that Israel is in. Would you blame them? Hey, if I had, I'd like to think if they had my son or daughter, God forbid, was one of those hostages, I shudder to think of it. But I would like to think that I'm godly enough to know, look, they're in with these evil people. Evil has come to them. Evil has their arms around them, but they know God. They were raised in a Christian family. They know God. And I would say to the military powers, Netanyahu, look, I'm dependent on you to do everything you can. I know what you have to do because I don't want some other kids, other parents to go through this, and they surely will if you let Hamas get away. If you don't take care of Hamas now, and you're the only country with the courage and the guts to do it, everybody's pulling for you. I know what can happen. I just want your word that you're going to do everything you can to get the hostages, get rid of Hamas, and get my kids home safe. I really think that's where I would be in my heart. Because I do have what they call empathy for others. And surely that would happen. Let me tell you how far I go on this. That's why I'm for capital punishment. I wouldn't be for capital punishment if you had life sentences without parole that fit the crime. But we don't have that. We have some here in California. The parole board just released one of the Manson family members, Leslie Van Houten. Certain crimes, when you take somebody's life, you should never come out among free people again. You go in and you find God, you find Christ, great. Make your ministry, go as far as you can within that prison. You have guys like Richard Ramirez, the Hillside Strangler. You've got these people committing horrific crimes, killing people, and these panel of experts saying, well, they're cured. So, and I'm saying, look, if Richard Ramirez, I'll use him as an example, or Richard Speck back in the Chicago killed the nurses, and just, the New York guy that killed the kids, Jeffrey Dahmer, those kind of people. If they told me, look, here's the choice. We're going to either let Jeffrey Dahmer go or execute him, but you have to be the one to pull the lever to drop the pills. It hurts my heart. It makes me sick to say this, but I'm telling you right now, I would drop the pills. And I wouldn't do it as horrible as Jeffrey Dahmer was, got killed in prison. I wouldn't say, as I drop the pills, with clenched teeth, die, sucker. No, I would drop the pills. I would pray for his soul. I would pray that he found God in his last moments. But if you let Jeffrey Dahmer go, he's not proven to me that he can't stop killing people. He's proved to me without a shadow of doubt that he will kill innocent people and do horribly egregious things to them, like eat them. So I got a choice. Stop that threat that he's inevitably going to follow through on, because they kill people like that, kill because they like it. If you saw the video of Hamas, those weren't a bunch of soldiers out administering justice like all these protesters. Palestine needs justice. These were people that joyfully, gleefully cut the heads off of babies, burnt babies. They just did horrible things. They loved it. They liked it. And just like Jeffrey Dahmer, if you let them go, they'll do it again. So out of saving my kid or me, if I was taken hostage, I would like to think I would say, look, don't negotiate with them. I'll be saying my prayers, and whatever they do, I'll just try to, cut it out, cry, beg for mercy to them. I don't know what I'd do. I might go from macho to mush with the first electric prod in me or whatever. Cut off my fingers one by one. That's what they do. But I can't see me yelling, hey, stop coming at them, because they'll do it to somebody else. Kids that had a whole life. You ever stop and think about that, you protesters? Give little kids that were doing nothing out at that kibbutz that will never have a future. They'll never grow up to adhere to a political ideology and protest in front of the Capitol and then go have some, a latte afterwards with their friends. They'll never have a chance to do that. They'll never have a chance to grow up, meet the love of their life, and get married. And you had some people in there that were very sympathetic to the Palestinian plight. Didn't matter to them. They were indoctrinated from birth to murder. It wouldn't surprise me that most of those 10,000, that's what they estimate, 10,000 Hamas soldiers that crossed in that border, I would venture to say were volunteers. You just saw it in them. So, yeah, people are calling me because I'm for capital punishment. If Hamas, you could round them all up, put them in a camp, don't give them internet, don't make it cushy, don't make it abusive, but round them up, all those that you find, put them in a prison, an international prison, let them die in there with no chance of parole to be let loose on people again. That's what I'd be for. But we know what's going to happen. Hamas is not going to give Israel that choice. Some of them are going to surrender. But it's going to be, hey, you either kill the baby or the woman I'm holding in front of me if you want to get to me. And that poor Israeli soldier is going to have to make that difficult decision and live with that, just like our Vietnam veterans have. So, as I see these, I was almost sick to my stomach as I saw these pro-Palestinian. They were pro-Palestinian rallies. They were obviously pro-Hamas. There was no distinguishing. The music you hear behind me, they're having a meeting coming up here, folks. So, in the place where we broadcast from, I would just pray for a moment of reflection for you, that you go to your quiet place and really ask yourself your questions. Why do I hate Jews so much? Why? And if it comes out that maybe it's because what I've heard from people, not really what I know, but what I've heard, what I've read, the group I've been running with, just for the sake of your soul, I would suggest you step out of that, broaden your research, broaden your mind, open your heart to maybe, just maybe, you might have been wrong. Okay, I'm not telling you to embrace Israel's got flaws like the United States has flaws, but we're the only democracy on earth, really, true democratic powers. Western Europe gave it up a long time ago. America and Israel are two of the really true democracies left that allow people to be free. Nation of laws, yes, be free. But you get free to burn the flag, pee on the flag, whatever, and you won't get locked up. You try that for Hamas. Try to burn the Hamas flag and see what happens. So it's what Israel is doing is really a tough job. I don't think America has the guts to do it. We didn't have the guts to go into Saudi Arabia. We knew where those hijackers were from. Where did we go? We went and attacked Iraq. Yeah, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. We didn't have the guts to do it, Israel. Israel knows where they came from underneath a hospital called the Al-Shifa Hospital. They're going after them. They're not bombing some other country. Makes sense, doesn't it? You're going to go administer justice to those who committed the crime. So, again, just a suggestion. Again, we can spend a whole show talking about the Palestine-Israel land issue and the dispute. That's, to me, two separate things. You don't connect that mass murder on October 7th with the plight of the Palestinian people and trying their best to find a homeland that's recognized by the UN and the rest of the world. Folks, thanks for tuning in. God bless you. God bless America. And just do your best and let God do the rest. And I promise you, it may not turn out the way you want it right now, but I tell you, in the long run, God will reveal to you that trust in Him was the way to go. God bless you and love you all. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye now.
Happy trail.